Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Maryland Online how-to webinar in our series. This one will be spotlighting one of our cool tools, Hypothesis. And we have a host of experts to kind of talk you through it. And now I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed chair and also the moderator, chair of Maryland Online, the moderator of the webinar, Mike Mills.
Thanks, Wendy. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. I'm excited to moderate this session because of the experience I have with Hypothesis at Montgomery College, and excited to have a colleague of mine, Chip Gladson from Montgomery College, demonstrate the use of Hypothesis. We're also joined today by Jeremy Dean and Sonia Visser, who are both part of the education team at Hypothesis. Sonia is the partnership lead and covers the state of Maryland. Chip teaches writing and literature on the Germantown campus of MC. He's also the college coordinator of writing in the disciplines. He received a Master of Fine Arts in Writing from Columbia and a bachelor's in English from Dickinson College and the University of East Anglia. He has taught writing and literature at the University of Maryland University College, now the global campus, Shepherd University and American University. He has also lived in Sri Lanka, Pakistan, England, Kenya, and Thailand. And to get us started, we'll do a brief overview of Hypothesis, and then we'll turn it over to Chip for a demonstration. Feel free to use the chat to put your questions in. We'll moderate that chat function and ask the questions as appropriate. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeremy.
Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to be here. I grew up in Maryland, near the Montgomery College campus. So it's been great to be working with Mike over the years, and I'm excited to connect with more folks in Maryland. I'm an English professor by training, actually, and that's where I sort of started getting interested in annotation as a technology, of course, in the sort of analog format of writing in the margins of my own books. And when I became a teacher, I, of course, was urging my students to do the same because I know it had been such a critical practice for myself. And Hypothesis is just a tool that allows students to annotate digital texts, right? It's even more important that we annotate and do the work that annotation does in a digital environment because we don't have the books like Chip has behind us sometimes where we can really feel through the pages to find things. Annotation is even more important. And with Hypothesis, there's some additional affordances that come in to the annotation practice because it can be social, because it can be multimodal. There's some neat stuff that you can do in addition to simply writing in the margin of a text with our tool. It plugs into the LMS, and it's very easy to use. It's simply a matter of adding an annotation layer on top of text that you're already teaching. So I'll just say that this is something that somebody can pick up quickly at a school once it's installed and doesn't require a kind of overhauling of your syllabus because it really is just plugging into existing reading. We're happy to answer more questions about Hypothesis, how it works and how it could work on your campus or at your school. But I'm really here to listen to Chip. I always want to hear from instructors and teachers about how they're using the tool and learn from them about how it's going.
Great, Chip, it's all yours.
Excellent, thank you, Jeremy. And it's lovely to be in the room with another person who writes in the margins of the print book. I still do, but I want to talk today about this wonderful tool, Hypothesis. So welcome. And I should say first that I'm speaking as a practitioner. So just so you know, I teach with Hypothesis in my classes at Montgomery College. And I've been doing it for a year. It's new to me, relatively new to me too. We piloted it and it works great. And I started using it a week after I got the training. So I think that may help people understand how easily it is integrated, as Jeremy said too. And it happens that this pilot became available at about the same time as the world shut down. So there's a silver lining to this. in that it may be one of the best tools to address a real concern that we have, and that is with student engagement and making a student-centered classroom. Hypothesis does well for that. So let me just go through. First, basically, I want to talk about the theory. Why do I use hypothesis? Why might it work for you? Also, and then in the second half, maybe if we have a chance, and if it makes sense with the different people who are here in the room, to have a little demonstration and show you a couple of things there too. So I'm happy to do that if that works. Having the representatives from Hypothesis, it may be a good opportunity there to have them answer questions too, specific to your needs. So we'll leave that open. You can ask questions at any point here. Please post them in chat. Mike Mills is going to monitor the chat, and he'll just butt in and interrupt me whenever it comes up. So that's what I'm hoping for. And I have a couple questions to ask you too. So let me just share here. And again, I'm talking today about Hypothesis, anchor tool for student-centered learning. Student-centered learning being the key here. Oops, having a little trouble. There we go. So first thing is, I'll ask you a question, and you can answer in chat. Do you mostly teach face-to-face? Do you teach live or synchronous online, or you teach asynchronously? And I'm asking that to begin with, because maybe that will help us to understand your needs and perhaps how we might use Hypothesis. So just very briefly, type in the chat, and I'll get the verdict from Mike in a moment. So if you're new to Zoom, I bet you're not new to Zoom. If you are, you'll find the chat tool in your Zoom window, click on chat, and then simply type into the chat box and click enter.
I'm getting a couple of all of the above.
Yes.
So it doesn't
Okay, well, that's
look like
good.
it's one modality.
Okay, that's good. That's good, because, and I'm not surprised, by the way, because Hypothesis is a tool designed for the way we teach and learn today, and that is the anytime, anywhere model, right? That's where we're going. It works in the structured remote or synchronous online classroom. It works in the asynchronous online classroom. It seems like a potential bridge to the hybrid flexible model, the hybrid flexible classroom. And even it works outside the classroom, right? So for example, I use it to annotate texts that I read online when I'm not teaching. So it's useful for that purpose as well. Another thing that makes Hypothesis quite useful here is about the teaching of reading, kind of what Jeremy said there. So the old analog method, as he mentioned, where we had students write in the margins and how we may have learned to annotate text. So Hypothesis is a significant improvement over that. So my next question for you to answer in chat is, do you assign readings in your classes? Whatever discipline, whatever department you teach in, do you include this? Perhaps is it on the department syllabus as a learning outcome? What's the verdict, Mike?
We have a lot of yeses coming in.
Good. My
one person's not currently teaching, but yes, when she does teach.
Okay, wonderful. So so my belief and hope in higher education is restored. Wonderful. Yes, we do teach reading, right? We teach reading across the disciplines. And in fact, I hear more in my role as the coordinator of writing in the disciplines about effective reading interventions from faculty, from colleagues, than perhaps I do about writing. So faculty know that this is an area that they need to improve. Students need to learn to read at college level. And Hypothesis does that. So it improves the way I teach reading and writing annotations at the college level. So as Jeremy said, well, in the past, I might have assigned a reading and perhaps a group activity or answers on a study guide or a reader response, something like that. And then I would try to infer what students had missed or which students needed more help, right? So I'm trying to figure out like, what's going on? Where do these students need more help in learning to read and learning to annotate effectively? That method was pretty inefficient and I was slow to react. right? I get the study guides back, I get the reader responses back, a week later, I'd go read them all. It took a long time. And then I'd start to figure out, wow, here's what they didn't get in this assigned reading. And then I'd think about, well, how can I teach this better next time, perhaps? Here's what's different about Hypothesis. As a formative assessment, it's built in. So the feedback loop for the teaching of reading is much more efficient and much more illuminating. I can recognize and respond to my students' needs in real time. So what happens? The instructor can view the annotations by students immediately. And the instructor can write on the text. So here's the text page, there are the annotations next to it, as I'll show you in a couple examples in a moment. And I can see what each student has posted. I can ask questions. I can have students respond to each other. So all of these functions within Hypothesis make that sort of feedback loop where I'm teaching reading at a college level much better. And by the way, you can also grade annotations. So if you're one of those instructors who grades every single activity, then you can do that as well. Here's another important thing, the third thing I want to just talk about very first, and that is how Hypothesis pairs well with open educational resources, OERs. So I'm wondering, here's the last chat question for you. Do you use open educational resources in your classes? In chat, you can just respond very briefly. It's a yes, no. I know that some Maryland colleges and universities have adopted OERs across the disciplines. So I'll wait for your response.
Lot of yeses, Chip, and a couple emphatic yeses.
Okay, great. So I use OER in all of my classes now. And what's great about Hypothesis here as an anchor tool for this is that I can make the materials available to my students easily and ethically, all within our learning management system. And we use Blackboard at Montgomery College. So here's an important thing. The more educational technologies that I use in my classes, and I use many, and I had an epic fail last night in my evening class with another pilot ed tech that we're using. Just very difficult when these things happen. It's nice when it works. And so far, for me, Hypothesis has worked. And in fact, it works so well because it is integrated, fully integrated in Blackboard. And as I hear from the Hypothesis folks, it's equally well integrated in other LMS. So the learning tools interoperability, that LTI, third-party resources that students can access in one click, right? That's a big deal for me. I teach reading and writing. If students had to spend half their time registering for new accounts, finding URLs, accessing sites, removing pop-up blockers, entering passwords, I might as well just teach technology, right? So Hypothesis is integrated for that seamless and secure access. And that's crucial. That makes a big difference when I'm deciding which technologies I want to use, because I don't want to overwhelm my students. And I want to make sure that the tools that I use, in this case, Hypothesis, are well integrated, and they can help me to do these things that are so important to me, like using OER. So I'll get back to these three things as I look through some examples here. But first, what's the problem? Why do we need something? Why a new tool? I don't just add new tools just willy-nilly, right? I got enough stuff to do. But here's what we're finding, and this is clear from the surveys of students over the years. So this lack of interaction among instructors and students. When they're asked to identify current concerns in online learning, 27% of students mentioned the lack of interaction with the instructor, and 24% pointed to the lack of interaction with classmates. These survey results, this particular one, is from Wiley Education Services in 2021, and they echo results from the 2012 survey by Learning House, Slanian. And this call for more interaction, which is coming from students, has only grown, I think, during the pandemic. So all these students are learning remotely, or in most cases still, right? That also includes those students who have taken distance learning classes, asynchronous online classes, and had in the past too, right? So this is a big concern. And on the other side, instructors know the importance of it, right? So we've been talking about this for years. And we can meet the call for more interaction in online classes by offering active and collaborative learning strategies. Hypothesis gives instructors the opportunity to extend collaborative learning beyond, like, the discussion area. That's what we have in Blackboard, for example, in asynchronous classes, as well as in synchronous or live online classes. So we want to meet this need. We want to do it as often as we can, as frequently as we can. And we know that this is important. So let me give you some examples. How do I use Hypothesis, particularly when I'm teaching reading and annotation? And how might these examples work for you, depending on your department or your discipline? So here's an example. In the very first week of the class this semester, I'm teaching Rhetorical Context as kind of a preview of the other reading we'll do all semester long. And I wanted to introduce them to, purpose, audience, author, and message, and sort of how to look for these elements when they are reading an assigned selection, an essay or a short story, or in this case, a poem. So I was really moved by Amanda Gorman's The Hill We Climb. She recited at the inauguration of the president most recently. And so I thought, okay, here's the poem. I can grab it. I can make it available to my students in my Blackboard course site using Hypothesis. So they're going to see the text right in front of them. They will also, for example, see a video with Amanda Gorman reciting the poem. It's all right there in one place. They don't have to go somewhere else to find this, right? It's within our Blackboard shell. And so I'm asking them to do this job, and I'm going to tell them to add annotations. And by the way, here's the rest of the assignment. Here's question 2. What is the audience? Who is the audience for The Hill We Climb? And I want them to think about this while they're looking at the text. So look for clues in the text. And also the author. So if there's anything they can learn here about the author of the text. So this is just a sample idea about how I might do this. Now, in the past, with that analog reading assignment, I might have assigned this activity as independent work for students to complete on their own. With Hypothesis, I can make it more active and collaborative, to make it a shared dialogue about the reading. And another important thing about this is they're looking at the text itself while we're having the dialogue. So if you, Jeremy, may have experience with this, if you ever taught writing or reading or literature for that matter, when I teach the American novel or I teach intro to lit, right? Discussions can often, if they're separate in another place in the course site, they can go off on a tangent, right? And that's great. I want to know what my students feel. I want to know their reflections, how it connects to their own experiences, perhaps. But at some point, we want to look at the text. We want to focus at the text. And if we're reading, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, this huge book, when I ask them, okay, give me an example from the text. Show me where this idea appears. And, they say, well, wow, let me see, where's my book? Here it is. And then it was somewhere, where was it? Oh, here, you're right, it takes a long time. What we know from switching to digital text is that part of the job can be much easier. We can find text easily. And when we're using Hypothesis, we can make our conversation, that dialogue, focus on the text as well. So that's what we did here in the very first week of class. Here's the poem. Here's Amanda Gorman reading the poem. Here's the text, and my students can go in there and add their annotations. So how does it look? What happens when we do that? Here's an example. One thing that we can do, and I said that instructor-driven prompts are so important for active learning, right? We want to do this at a high rate, frequency. So in fact, in particular, with students with disabilities. You know, we've learned that this rate of student or prompts that students respond to should be about 3.5 per minute to really engage students who need that extra help, right? And it's true for all students as well. So we want to give those students an opportunity to respond and to engage with the material. Here's an example of how, you know, I did it in one case. I asked students to reply to questions about vocabulary and an editorial about social media networks. And as you can see, Hypothesis allows the instructor, or any user for that matter, to post a question, and then for other users to post replies. So I asked a question here. Let me get my Zoom stuff out of the way. And I asked, for example, what are algorithms? How are they used by social media networks? It's an important part of this article. And students came back and replied. One student replied here, algorithm is a set of rules set to be followed in other problem-solving operations, especially by computer. These set of rules help the big tech to stop misinformation that spreads like wildfire on the internet. At least that is what I believe. Great, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to know what the student believes, and also to give students a chance to figure out, well, what is this important vocabulary word that they encounter in the reading? That's active learning, and Hypothesis makes it possible here. Okay, here's another example. I'm having some trouble here. Let me see if I can, this one, here we go. So let's say you don't teach first year writing and reading. Let's say you teach in some other discipline and you use a lot of quantitative reasoning. You use charts and other types of graphs and things like that. You can include those in Hypothesis as well. So they can assign readings with graphs and images. In this case, students read and annotate a report on generational differences. And this is from a web page from the Pew Research Center. So there's the URL from the web page. I put it into my Hypothesis assignment, and students can come here and discuss, have a dialogue about the text as well as about the numbers here, the quantitative reasoning. So you can see that it is a tool that works across the disciplines in this way. In this case, they're preparing to write a comparison and contrast analysis about men and women in college.
Can I jump in and
please?
Quick question?
Yeah.
How have the students responded to using Hypothesis, and is there a learning curve for them?
That's a great question. So let me answer by giving a little comparison. I'm going to hide the identity of the other tool, and I'm going to just show you how these two things work. So that Amanda Gorman assignment, that was the first week of class. So I'm not doing it. We're covering the syllabus, right? We're talking about how do you use Zoom and how do you use the Blackboard course site and how do you navigate. However, at least in the case of the Hypothesis assignment, I want to engage them right away. It was seamless. So even in the first week, they came in, there's the place to click. It's the assignment in the week one. There's 5 items there. I can show you in a second. And then one of them is a reading activity about the Amanda Gorman poem. And they click on it, and then I ask the questions there. We can begin in the case of a structured remote classroom or synchronous, can begin that activity live, right? So we're talking, we're sitting on Zoom, say, okay, go to your Blackboard course site and go to this assignment, and then they can see it themselves, and I can demonstrate right there in front of them how to add annotations. It's intuitive. It couldn't be easier, right? And then they add their annotations and they get going that way. And then they can finish that exercise on their own later. So it can be one of those great activities, learning activities that works first in the live classroom on Zoom perhaps, and then switches over to an independent exercise. However, in both cases, they're interacting, right? It's a social annotation in both cases. Compare that to another tool that I'm piloting this semester, which I was using last night. It was the second time we looked at it. I demonstrated it before the class in a live class last night, in our evening class. And then when they clicked into this, it required a little bit extra, even though it is also integrated within Blackboard. But when that started, it all sort of went haywire. So this particular tool didn't have an easy interface where all the students were looking at the same column to finish the assignment. This thing gave students many, many different opportunities of places to go, and also different templates to follow to finish the assignment. They were doing pre-writing for the first essay. And the other problems happened too. So, out above and beyond what I'm able to deal with, and I haven't received problems with this for students, but last night the first 9 students were able to access the tool. After that, the tool sent an error message that said, sorry, your institution has reached the maximum user number. Nobody else is allowed in. And the workaround from then on, it was a late night. It was a really difficult thing to fix. In the case of Hypothesis, students have found it really easy to use. It doesn't require sort of additional things from them, and they can do it the first time they look at it. So from the student side, yeah, pretty easy.
And when those tools don't work, they become the focal point, right? Not the learning. And that's
Absolutely
what you're trying to focus on.
That's right. Again, I think technology is great. It would be a wonderful field to teach in, but it's not mine. So I don't want to teach technology. I don't want to spend all my time doing that. And Hypothesis sort of takes that out of the equation. I don't have to spend all of my time dealing with those tech issues once I set up an assignment in Hypothesis. So as Jeremy said, I'm going to be teaching these readings already. It's part of my syllabus. And I simply put them into a different box, the Hypothesis box. And then it's there. My students are reading those same articles, the same essays and so forth, just as they would read otherwise. They're reading it right in Blackboard, and they're also making their annotations there. So for the students, it's quite easy. It's also pretty easy for the instructor. So to adopt it from the instructor point of view, as many of you may be wondering, it's pretty easy. And once you get used to it, of course, it's really easy. It doesn't take much time at all. This is particularly the case because it's so well integrated, right? So I'm just choosing, when I make a new assignment, I'm choosing to do it in Hypothesis. It's one of the menu items that allows me to just move on. So there's the reading, there's thing. And as I said earlier, and I'll say again here now, here's another example about integrating open educational resources. So I've got a URL, I've got a PDF that I want to share with my students, and I want them to make annotations. So I want to have a dialogue about the text here. In this case, students read and annotate a personal narrative essay published on Akpa's official author website. And all the benefits of OER are all here. And Hypothesis is really the anchor that's allowing me to do it easily, to do it ethically, right? Because we are seeing Akpa's actual website. That's what's here. So we're not, copying and pasting into a Word document, saving it as a PDF, and then sending out to students on the sly, right? Here's the website. Here you can go ahead and read it here. And also the other aspects of OER really come to the fore. And that is, first of all, it's free, right? Also, the lexile and the length of the text are appropriate for my students, my first year students, mostly in English 101. And thematically, the OER readings I find and share through Hypothesis are more interesting to my students and more inclusive than, the boilerplate readings that I might find in a textbook or a reader, that anybody in the world might use. So students who identify with the community or with voices typically underrepresented in a discipline, they're more engaged when they encounter content that raises those voices. And another thing about this OER benefit that works so well within Hypothesis, I can also change content on short notice. Let's say this semester, I have a lot of students who are interested in social justice movements, or maybe in public health, right? I can update my assigned readings on the fly. So I think, oh, when I, back in August, I thought we're going to read this article and then this essay and then this book. I say, wait a second, my students are interested in this direction. And so I can also react to that, and I can change the readings. And because Hypothesis is the tool that sort of makes it easy to plug in, then the OER is so much more effective, so much easier to use. So in this sense, I think for instructors and for students, it really is a great benefit. It's something that works really well in this sense. So I wonder, did we have any questions here about these uses, the theory part?
We don't in the chat, but I do have another question that I'd like to throw out to you. Let's say I'm teaching multiple sections of the same course. Is there a way to annotate across sections so that all the students are annotating the same document? You get a richness there.
That's a great question. Wow. And that's the sort of thing that could have helped me last night with the other tool. Yeah, so I don't use that yet myself. I wonder if Sonia or Jeremy or somebody from Hypothesis knows about this functionality.
Sure. So Hypothesis kind of depends on the structure of courses and rosters that are, as provisioned by the LMS, right? So it kind of depends on the hierarchy of things in the learning management system. Canvas has the concept of sections as well as groups. I think Blackboard also has a concept of groups. So if there are groups within a course, they could annotate together. But generally, Hypothesis is mapping to a course ID as given by the LMS. So sometimes that restricts that kind of the collaboration that you're talking about. So not every English 101 section at Montgomery College can annotate together, although I love that idea because I think it would be valuable.
Great, thanks.
I'm interested also in the potential downsides. Why might you not use a tool like this? We're scholars, so we're skeptical, and we want to think, well, where would it work? And maybe some places where it wouldn't work as well. I'm curious, anybody has ideas about that? So as I said, by the way, I didn't mention, and I don't use for grading. So I don't grade each student based upon the annotations that they put there, but you can do that. I know that you can do that. That was part of the training that I received. I don't do it, by the way, because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. I find that my students who are coming directly from high school in particular have learned this, or rather are motivated by these sort of extrinsic factors, like how many points is this worth before I do it? And I don't want education to be that kind of transactional activity. I want my students to be working up toward great essays, writing great essays and really understanding the readings. And for that reason, I'm not just assigning points to every single little thing, but so, that's a thing. You want to use that tool and you want to use that function in Hypothesis, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I wonder about other functions. Does it make sense, by the way, do you want me to, I'm a new user here, but I feel pretty comfortable about using it. I can take you into one of my Blackboard course sites and I can just show you how does a Hypothesis assignment, get set up. Do you want me to do that? Or
sure.
Would you like somebody else
I
to
think
do
that would be, helpful. Thank you.
Okay, great.
And as you're setting that up, Becky George had posted a link in the chat about options for using Hypothesis with small reading groups, just dependent on your LMS.
Okay, yeah, great. You can make smaller groups. That's really important. So, individuals, you can group, you can do it by individuals. Each student in the class is annotating and they're sharing it for the whole class. And then you can also make it into smaller groups. So it's another way it carries over, for example, from, maybe live sessions that you're doing virtually in small groups or breakout rooms in Zoom. You can keep those groups and sort of migrate over into the course site, into your LMS. So it's another thing you can do. Let's see, let me find a different, let me put up something here just to help you think about, how else might I do something like that? And I'm going to take you to, first, let me take you to look at how it might work, how you might view something, look at from the student's point of view, and then I'll show you how I set it up. I think that's logical, right? So let me just go here. And
Chip,
I'm sharing.
Chip, as you're getting there was another question in the chat. And I don't know if this is for you or maybe Jeremy or Sonia. Can you have breakout groups annotate separately?
Somebody from Hypothes want to answer that one?
Sure, I think that's what Becky's responding to in the chat there, about how to break a course roster into smaller groups for annotation. It's somewhat dependent on LMS. So there's a pathway within Blackboard, there's a pathway within Canvas. But that you can do it, and Becky's posted a link for the how-to.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great. Okay, so I'm taking you, this is a live class. It's just the first thing at my fingertips. I'm here all day long. I might as well show you this one. And it's from week 2 of the semester, so it just happened, And here's what they're doing this week. One of the things they're looking at a page and learning about personal narrative writing. They're going to read and annotate then these 2 reading selections. So in both cases, they're accessible through Hypothes. So rather than put them somewhere else and they have to download a PDF or a doc or something like that, or even perhaps go to the library, and because this is an OER class, a Z degree class, as we call it at MC, where do I find these readings? Well, you're going to find the reading right here. You don't have to go anywhere else, okay? So I'm just going to show you, scroll down here. Here's one of the readings. The title is How I Celebrate Life on the Day of the Dead. This is an open or public domain reading through LibreText, one of the great OER sources that I use. And so I'm asking them here, it's early in the semester, and I want them to think about, again, rhetorical context, to build on what they learned the week before. What's the purpose of this narrative essay? What do we know about the audience? What can we infer about the audience? What about the author? And then also in this case, to build, we're building each time. What then can you say about the message or the theme? What can the reader walk away with once they've read this? So I'm asking my students to do this. We begin the activity live in class, and they're also participating in literature circles in the Zoom meeting. So each of them has an assigned role for the reading, and that also plays into their annotations. I've asked each of them to address these concerns, what they were asked to do in their role as a reader in their group. So, they can come here, and then what they do is they can first, I'm showing you different ways of viewing this. Here's one student who's writing about the author, and the author describes what happened to her and what she does each year. So this is a factual story. Great. So we were talking about fictional versus factual narratives. That's a great insight. And she was able to do it by highlighting this little bit of text. And once she did that, she opened this thing. I'll show you how this works. So if I'm here doing the same thing, I want to say something. Let's see. Let's see. I just want to say something here. So I highlight this bit of text. Can you see on Zoom the little pop-up that comes? Great. Sometimes Zoom follows us, sometimes it doesn't. I'll click Annotate, and a new message box appears on the right. It appears below that text that I just highlighted. And here I can type in something. I can say, the author is looking back on an important event in her life. And I can then choose to share this annotation with everybody in the class, or I can choose to keep it only for myself. So for example, this is how I use it when I'm doing reading on my own. I don't necessarily want to share everything, but I can put it here and put this insight here. What I do there a lot is when I'm preparing about teaching reading, sometimes I'll do that. And I'll make little notes myself, little CF notes, you know, look here and then look on page 3 so you can tell students about the next thing that is relevant. So that's how the student would do the annotation. And it's also what I can do. So if I come down here and I say, this writer uses some words that may be unfamiliar to some readers. So on the instructor side, whoops, I didn't quite get it. Let me cancel that one. I'm going to try to get, I'm sorry, I'm having some mouse and keyboard issues today. I'm going to replace my batteries. What does rebozo mean? And perhaps also, why does the author include this word in the original Spanish? Question mark would do. And then I can post it and it shows up for everyone in the class to read. So when you click on that word, it'll take you to my annotation, or I'll show you, if I click on this, it'll take you to the word where it appears in the text. So nice and easy for the student. They can go back and forth like that. And nice and easy for the instructor too. You can ask the questions right here, you know, so you don't have to have, you can set up the assignment as I did earlier with a bunch of questions all in one place so they can focus on, for example, rhetorical context, and then move over to the hypothesis page. Or, you know, you can start here. You can do everything. Once the students are used to it, once it becomes a routine, it's really quite easy just to do everything really within the hypothesis page where they have the reading activity. Okay. Now, you still want me to try out a little demo?
Absolutely.
By the way,
We've
okay.
got some time. Go ahead.
Okay, so when I go out of this, by the way, this hypothesis tool, like a lot of third-party tools, it takes me back out to the home page. No big deal to me. And then I can just go back in and find something. So I'm going to go in here, and just for the sake of ease, I'm going to find, let's see, some. Here's what I'll do. Let me just go to a new page here. And here is a course content page in Blackboard. And I want to set up something. I want to do a hypothesis assignment here. So I'm in course content in Blackboard. There's nothing else here yet. I just set up this dummy folder for you. And if I choose to build content, you may be familiar, if you use Blackboard, of using this spot for adding a new item. This is also the place, for example, where you might add a new assignment or a test or assessment, right? So if I go to build content here and I scroll down, can you see the drop-down menu on Zoom? Oh, good. Well done, Zoom. One of those choices for me, because it is integrated as an LTI in Blackboard for us at MC, is hypothesis. So I can go ahead and click on hypothesis here and then set up the assignment as I would, or set up the activity as I would anything else, right? So I say here, you know, reading, however, whatever nomenclature you use in your class, and I don't have something ready at the moment. I should have thought about that, but let me see if I have a reading some here, or let's just see something that I've read recently online. Maybe I can share that for our purposes. So okay. So I might want to use, oh, that won't work. I might want to use something with a video. Here's a TED Talk, for example, and I can ask students to respond to this, and I can go find the text and put it in here as well. So depending on what you want to use, I want to go find something that I've already used to make it easier. Sorry, I didn't set this up beforehand. Let's see. Let me use another one that I have handy here, perhaps. Sorry about this. I didn't think about finding something that I would share here.
You're being too deliberate, Chip. You really want to choose.
Okay, so I'm going to find. By the way, I wouldn't use this particular thing because it's, you know, finding something from somebody else's K through 12 classroom, but I'm grabbing it here right now just to show you. So I would probably use something from a different level. You know, I would ask it to students to look at it differently. In many cases, I can share something that we found from our library. So the ethical use of OER in this sense is, here's something that's from our library. So students can also access it directly library, or I can grab the PDF, the whole text, right? Or the full text, and then I can put that in here. So if I take this one, I'm creating a hypothesis assignment, and this one is fish cheeks, really common in the English 101 classroom. And then in this case, the hypothesis will also allow you to enable evaluation. And because it's a Blackboard course site activity, you get these other things. You can track the views, make it available, set the timer, all that stuff. So all that stuff is normal, right? And you can even put an attachment here. Here's an important thing about hypothesis. If I first, and I can write in descriptions or instructions here, I'm gonna leave that for now. But I set this up first. So here is the activity in my Blackboard course site. It is a hypothesis. It has its own, whoops, little logo there. I come back into it once I've set up the shell. Okay, this is key. I set up the shell first, and then I come back in. And at this point, stage 2 is when I actually enter either a URL of a web page or PDF, or select a PDF from, for example, my Google Drive, my directory, right? I can do it either way. So wherever I'm keeping my readings, I got a bookmark with all the readings from my English 101. Nice and easy, I can find them there. And I can click on this button and I can paste in that URL. In this case, it's a URL to a PDF that's in a place that I wouldn't normally use. So please don't do this at home, kids. But as you can see, here is that text. Here's the text right here. And here's the hypothesis annotation tool and the column on the right. And I can get started by telling my students, here's what I want you to do. Respond to this narrative essay by Amy Tan by identifying X, Y, and Z. And then I'll tell them how to do it. So what's the setting of this personal narrative? I may be asking them. Setting is Christmas Eve dinner at the home of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Save with the class. As the instructor, I might also ask questions here. So that's really a too long version of what it would take to make this happen. The real problem was me in finding the actual content, but there you go. It's that easy. Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Chip, can you hear me, Chip?
Yes.
I just wanted to add one thing about, this is also sort of a side note for Gloria and Mike. I think we have an update to our Blackboard implementation that would allow Chip to have a third option in the menu he showed us where he entered the URL for that document. There's now an option to use a file that's already in your Blackboard course, because many instructors will, you know, have PDFs that they just have in the file for their course. So now there's a third menu item when you get to that stage. We saw the URL where you entered, and there was also a Google Drive option. We're also going to have a Microsoft OneDrive option soon. but there is currently the ability to do Blackboard files. So we should connect with somebody at Montgomery College to update the Blackboard implementation there so that you have that option as well. So just minor point.
That's great. I can tell you that's going to be wonderful for a couple of reasons. One, the content collection in Blackboard. So I got all these things already, right? I had to go out and find them, and they're there already. That's even easier for me to find and put there. The other thing about it is, in the past, and this is true for a lot of tools, if I've got a URL that I already put into a Blackboard course site and I'm just finding it again, or it's showing up on in a tab in my browser, it'll come back to not an original PDF with the URL. It may come up and say, this is from Chip Gladson's Blackboard course site or something. And it doesn't know where to go. So with this new approach where we can access readings that are already in our content collection, that's great. That's going to be a nice addition.
And one thing that I wanted to commend you on, Chip, and sort of bring to others' attention is the design of your assignments, which I'm hoping at some point you might share with us in the spirit of open education resources, because I think they'd be great models for other instructors, especially because we see so many folks in kind of English 101, early writing courses at schools. I think it'd be a great model for others. But one thing I wanted to call out was just the deliberateness of the assignment of, you're not just saying 2 annotations and 1 reply, which is fine, by the way. You can just sort of say, I want to see 3 annotations and make it very, low stakes and undirected. But I really appreciated the way that you kind of directed students with their sort of rhetorical context framework, right? Think about audience, think about author. And then we saw the students applying those kind of reading strategies as they read. I think that's one of the powerful aspects of the assignment that you showed us. And I just wanted to point out that can be replicated for any number of disciplines, right? Because you're teaching a sort of Rhet Comp course, you want students thinking about rhetoric. But if you were teaching a science course and you were having students reading academic science articles, there might be different reading strategies that you want them to be deploying as they read. And those can be kind of codified, if you will, in the assignment and then applied by the students. And one way to do that you might think about is having students use the tag function. I don't know why I made scare quotes. There's a tag function, but having students use the tag function in Hypothesis to say, this is an annotation about author, and I'm calling that out by tagging my annotation author. This is an annotation about audience, and I'm actually calling that out by tagging my annotation with audience. That helps with their sort of metacognitive thinking as they're, deploying those reading strategies, but it also can help you to sort of say, let's talk about audience in this article, and then you can filter the article just for the audience annotations and have that conversation about audience. Where do we see the points about audience popping up? So thanks for such a deliberate assignment. I would love to get a copy if we could share it with our instructors.
I will, thanks. And that's great by the tag idea. So you can search by individual student, as I said, you can do it by groups, but also if you've assigned a reading and you're asking specific or discrete questions for your students to they're looking for different things, right? So being able to just jump to that, and it's easy for students, they'll get used to that. It's really easy, right? So then everything about, for example, when they're doing rhetorical context, any, annotations that they put in there to address purpose, boom, you're going to take a look at all those in one place. Really nice idea. Yeah, I will do that in the future, I think, too. And by the way, I didn't mention some other things. So if you teach writing, a lot of people probably use it in English 101s. So it can be used not only for these published articles and essays and so forth, but it can be used for student writing from within the class, right? It's a nice and simple way. Some instructors like to do peer review, and you could use the social annotations for peer review as well. You can simply ask students to save their essays or their rough drafts, and you can save them as PDFs. You can sort of put them up here, and then make groups and have them do peer review with that focus on the text, which for a lot of us is important. We don't want to stray too much. So that's a great idea. Thanks, Jeremy. I will try tags in the future. Wonderful. Some questions coming in, Mike?
There's some good back channeling about annotating video, and the thought of not being able to annotate the video itself, but annotating but annotating the transcript of a video or a podcast.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So, by the way, in my Amanda Gorman little assignment I showed you, I only showed you the assignment setup. I didn't show you the annotations, but it's got a video of her on CNN or something, like, you know, they've got a feed, a video feed, and then the text of the poem itself appears under the video. And yeah, you can do that. It's a website, right? Anything that's a URL is going to find, you know, it's going to work here. Another thing about that, by the way, if I can just mention, so there is something about the authenticity of URLs, of websites, having students encounter text in these places, because, you know, that's where they're going to encounter text by and large in the future. So if you have a nice clean PDF with nothing else on it, the way it looks like, you know, in your Huck Finn book, you know, you may also want to give them the opportunities to make sense of what does text look like when it's on a web page with lots of other distracting items there. I can tell you, my mother has trouble, my 85-year-old mother has trouble reading text online because, you know, there's a lot to distract you. And, you know, maybe students can benefit from that sometimes, not all the time, but maybe sometimes that's the benefit as well.
Well, I'm just excited that your 85-year-old mother is online reading
Wow.
text. That's great.
Don't be too excited.
Well, Chip and Sonia and Jeremy, we've about run out of time. I would encourage people, if you're on Twitter, to follow Hypothesis. Jeremy, if you can maybe pop the Hypothesis handle in, and that would be great. Great examples, great uses across the country of people using Hypothesis, and you can get a sense of what others are doing. It's a great community, and I would encourage you all to take a look at that. And with that, Wendy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for moderating. And I want to also thank Chip for sharing his personal experience, as well as Sonia and Jeremy's expertise, and Becky, who had to jump off, but was giving some great links in the chat. I do want to let everyone know that this recording is going to be on the Maryland Online YouTube channel. So if you want to share it on your campus, I'm going to ask Sonia, if she hasn't already, she did put her email in. You can contact her directly if you're interested in seeing more about the tool or having a campus demo. And if for some reason you can't pull that from the chat or not sure, you all have my email, just email me and I'll make the connection. No problems. And if you're interested in other webinars, you can go to the www.Maryland Online website, and we have a variety of topics. Always interested in suggestions for more if you would like. And thank you all again, and enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you.